In a disastrous ruling today, the Supreme Court that gave us Citizens United just struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act. For those unfamiliar with Section 4, what it did is that it established the formula used to identify which state and local governments with a history of racial discrimination are required to pre-clear any changes to their voting laws with the Justice Department or a federal court. Without Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, states will be able to change their voting laws without first getting clearance from the federal government. Though the federal government can target a voting law in court, it can do so after it's passed. If the law is suspected of having a discriminatory effect on a particular racial group. So let me stop there and add that the government now has to wait and prove that voting ID laws and other restrictions on voting rights, that it now has to wait to prove that these laws have a discriminatory effect. Now, in order to do that, you first have to have an election, such as a state or even a presidential election. And you have to show proof after the fact that the law discriminated against other people. So, remember, in 2012, during the election, 19 states passed restrictive voter ID, photo ID laws. It also rolled back voter registration efforts and restricted early voting and absentee ballots. So, the VRA, Voting Rights Act, played a big role during that last election, where it was used to beat voter ID laws in Texas, South Carolina, and early voter restrictions in Florida. Now, of course, Florida is a major swing state, so the Voting Rights Act protected a lot of minority voters from getting disenfranchised and getting thrown off the voter rolls. Now, the majority opinion written by Justice John Roberts is as follows, quote, "Our decision in no way affects the permanent nationwide ban on racial discrimination in voting found in Section 2. We issue no holding on Section 5 itself, only the coverage formula. Congress may draft another formula based on current conditions." Oh, well, there it is. We pretty much shifted the formula in determining who is covered under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act to the one branch of government that can't get anything done. So the Supreme Court is given the power to determine the outcome of elections to a body that has about 9% approval rating and is almost entirely controlled by large corporations. Because remember, campaign contributions, campaign donations, it pretty much runs Congress. It's all about the money. Roberts also wrote, "Such a formula is an initial prerequisite to a determination that exceptional conditions still exist, justifying such an extraordinary departure from the traditional course of relations between the states and the federal government. Our country has changed, and while any racial discrimination in voting is too much, Congress must ensure that the legislation it passes to remedy that problem speaks to current conditions." So understand that by using the words current conditions, the 5 conservative justices that voted for this are saying that racism, when it comes to voting laws, no longer exists, and that the Congress should decide whether or not the voting laws passed in states impacts minorities when it comes to voting. Now, the whole problem I have with this is that, like I mentioned before, you have to have an election first to prove that to prove to the court that these laws unfairly impact minorities. Well, this will pretty much change elections from now on. Now remember, during the 2012 election, Barack Obama got 97% of the African American vote. The Latino vote was 71%. Also remember that the Tea Party activist Ken Emanuelson is famously quoted from saying that he doesn't want black people to vote if they're going to vote for Democrats, which, as you can see, most of them do. And in states like Florida that are required to win in order to become president, this is a game-changing decision that's going to have a major effect on our democracy for years to come. It's a sad day. It's a sad day for democracy. And it's a sad day for minorities and a sad day for elections.